Welcome back. What we were doing with national income accounting, and this we are going on with gross domestic product, and in this we are talking about nominal GDP and real GDP. And in this, now the topic, a small little topic, is GDP and welfare. The very fact that somebody says a good high GDP, that doesn't point out that that country is doing very well, because there are certain variables that have to be looked into. Only then we can say that a good GDP will mean progress, or welfare rather. Yes, it means progress, but welfare. We are talking about welfare, well-being of the people in general. So, for example, if I talk about, so in this we'll take five variables. Let's learn it up as DOPE, dope. So no, I just thought of it because I haven't written like this. You'll have to learn it up. This way. No is, say, we are talking about non-monetary exchanges. D is distribution of GDP, which is unequal here. Then suppose you're talking about O, output, which is so composition. What is your composition? P is population. Is it more or less how qualified, or how much is it developed? And E is externalities. So I wanted to just go through that. So these are the factors that point out that if there is welfare or not. So a rise in GDP is considered great, and a decline often is thought to be bad for the economy. So it is a value of real GDP and not nominal GDP, which is taken as an index of growth and hence greater well-being of the people of the country. So we've already understood that it's a real GDP we'll be talking about. So any rise in real GDP will mean more availability of goods and services in the country for final use, and obviously the economic welfare of the people would increase or will improve. So it may not be true because of certain factors. Now let's take, for example, I said no. I'll do like that, say no. What is no? That is non-monetary exchange. Many activities in an economy like that of India are not measured in money terms. Now, for example, goods and services, instead of exchanging for money, are directly exchanged against each other. So, and such exchanges are not recorded, or they are not counted while estimating countries' GDP. Especially this happens in the rural areas where you work the whole day. Suppose I'm a laborer there. At the end of the day, they'll give me a little bit of rice, and say 2 kgs of rice and 2 kgs of dal, or 1 kg of pulses or some vegetables. So if you convert it into money, it's quite a bit, but otherwise such calculations are, so it's like a barter. For the service you get something in return. And similarly, the domestic services provided by housewives, so, and some hobbies, like all of that. So this leads to like, for example, mother teaching her own son, she being a teacher, but this is not included if she's teaching her own son. So again, this leads to underestimation of GDP. So we see that GDP really does not provide a true picture of the productive activity and well-being of a country. So then we come to D. D is distribution of income. See, if in GDP of a country is rising, the welfare of the people may not necessarily rise. This may happen when increased GDP is concentrated in few hands. For the rest of the income maybe in fact have fallen. So in such a case, what will happen? The welfare of the entire country cannot be said to have increased. It could happen only to a few people. And again, DO. So no dope we talked about, no? So let's talk about output. So what is the composition of output? So GDP shows that the total of goods and services produced in the country that we know, it does not reflect on its composition. So for example, if there is an increase in GDP largely due to the production of socially harmful goods like liquor, tobacco, cigarettes, etc., so then what happens? So it really doesn't improve welfare of the people at large. Let's talk about, so we've done DOP, okay, no, sorry, we've done no non-monetary exchanges when we talked about distribution of GDP, which is unequal, more skewed towards the rich than into the poor, and the composition of output. What is there? What is it composed of? Harmful goods or good goods? Then let's talk about, say, population and externalities. So you can see that. I hope you're learning while we are doing it. At the end of the lesson, you should know all these points. So population growth. So GDP also does not take into account the growth in population of the country. Now, just imagine if the rate of population growth is greater than GDP growth rate, then per capita availability of goods and services will decline. And this will adversely affect the economic welfare of the people. So, then you have, let's come to E. Now, what is E? Externalities. So, what are these? Let's define externalities. They refer to the benefits or harms which a firm or an individual causes to another, but for which they are not paid or penalized. So these are caused during the process of production. So this may create economic, say, bad, such as negative externalities, say, such as pollution, smoke spewing out of chimneys or factories, or factories releasing contaminated water into rivers, etc. So now for such harmful effects, firms do not bear any cost. Therefore, if we take GDP as a measure of welfare of the country, we shall be overestimating the actual welfare. Similarly, GDP also does not take into account the positive externalities. Now, for example, construction of a flyover reduces transport cost and journey time for its users. Or expenditure on its construction is included in GDP but not the positive externality. So in this case we will be actually not so what will we be doing? We will be actually underestimating the actual welfare. So based on this, sometimes economists have come up with this concept of green GNP. What does it measure? It measures the national income or output adjusted for the depletion of natural resources